This is the second recording of Chapter 7.1 on ratio and proportion. A proportion is an equation that states that two ratios are equal. So if you have the ratio A over B, if you have the ratio A over B equal to C over D, it can also be written A colon B equals C colon D. Now, these parts of your proportion have different vocabulary words associated with them. The means are the inner terms, and you can see the inner terms better with this particular. So you've got inner terms B and C right here. I've highlighted them in blue. And outer terms are A and D. I've highlighted those in yellow. They're much easier to see when you write it in this manner. So we're going now to the extremes. Again, those are the outer terms, A and D. Cross product property says in a proportion, the product means multiplication of the means. So if you multiply the means, which are the inner terms, which are B and C, it will equal the product of the extremes, which are the outer terms. You can see that really well in this way that it's written. You will find that they are equal to one another. So that's why we can use cross products to solve proportions. In the checkpoint activity on page 359, number 3, we have 3 over x equaling 6 over 8. Well, if we use cross products, and we're going to go ahead and look at it, we'll look at it this way first. It would be 3 to x equals 6 to 8. And if you remember, let me check my colors here. Okay, so one more time, I highlighted them in the same colors we used before. The extremes are the outer terms, so the 3 and the 8. So the 3 and the 8, those are multiplied together, 3 times 8, which will give us 24. And then the means are the inner terms, so that's your x times your 6. It's much easier to see when you actually write the problem with the colons. So 6x, 6 times x is 6x. 3 times 8 is 24. It's going to be this in red. 6x equals 24. Use the division property of equality. Divide both sides by 6. And x is going to equal 4. Now, let's go ahead and have you try number 4. Number 4 is 5 over 3. Equals 15 over y. I'd like you to go ahead and write it as 5 colon 3 equals 15 colon y. I want you to write what the means, which are the inner amounts, and I'd like you to write what the extremes, which are the outer amounts, are. And then go ahead and set it up and solve it here just like we did. And let's go ahead and put the extremes will be the yellow, which is the outer, and that's your 5 and your y. The means will be the inner, and that is going to be easier to see here, outer versus inner. And then once you've finished solving, would you please go ahead and check what you did by turning the recording back on. Okay, so your means, your inner amounts were 3 times 5. Right here is 3 times 5. And your outer amounts, your extremes, are 5 times y. So you have 5 times y is 5y, equaling 3 times 5, which is 45. Use the division property of equality right here and divide by both sides by 5. 5y divided by 5 is y. 45 divided by 5 is 9. So your y value is 9. The next page, we're going to be even a little more complicated. Please be looking at your book on 359, and I'll be going over example 4 with you. Okay, you have 5 over 3 equal to y plus 2 divided by 6. We're going to go ahead and use the cross product property, which means that we are going to multiply 3 times y plus 2. And then that equals 5 times 6. And then you're going to use the distributive property. 3 times y is 3y. 3 times 2 is 6, so plus 6. 5 times 6 is 30. We're going to use the subtraction property of equality and subtract 6 from each side. We're trying to isolate the y, that's why we're doing what we're doing. So we end up with 3y equaling 24. Then we're going to use the division property of equality and divide both sides by 3, and y equals 8. You can check this really quickly. You just simply substitute in. We would have, let's do it in a different color. So if you weren't certain if you got the right value for y, you would check it. So we would have 5 over 3 equals 8 plus 2 over 6. 5 over 3 equals 10 over 6. 10 over 6 is not simplified, so 5 over 3 equals 5 over 3. When you simplify 10 6 by dividing numerator and denominator by 2, 10 divided by 2 is 5, 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 5/3 does equal 5/3. So that is a true statement. Therefore, y is in fact 8. Okay, now I'm going to have you try this next one, and then you'll turn the recording back on when you're finished, and you'll check it. But right now, let's get it written down. The checkpoint activity you're going to try is on page 359, number 5, and that's m plus 2 divided by 5 equals 14 divided by 10. Now you can just use cross products, or you could simplify 14 over 10 if you would like. So you could just multiply with cross products, or you could actually simplify 14 over 10, which I'm going to show you how that works. So you could go m plus 2 over 5. 14 over 10 is a fraction, but it's not in simplest form. So if I divide 14 by 2, I get 7, and if I divide 10 by 2, I get 5. So you can use 7 over 5 versus 14 over 10. It'll give you smaller numbers to work with. Go ahead and solve using cross products. Quickly check it, make sure you're right, and then turn the recording back on to see if you did all the steps. Okay, you would have used cross products, and you would have had 5 times in parentheses m plus 2, and then 5 times 7. You would have used the distributive property, which would have given you 5 times m, which is 5m, 5 times 2, which is 10. So 5m plus 10 equals 5 times 7, which is 35. Using the subtraction property of equality, you would have subtracted 10 from both sides and ended up with 5m equals 25. 35 minus 10 is 25. You would have used the division property of equality and divided both sides by 5. 5m divided by 5 is m. 25 divided by 5 is 5. To check it, you would have substituted the 5 right here into this m position. And so 5 plus 2, right here now, over 5 equals 14 over 10. We already know 14 over 10 simplifies to 7 over 5. And then 5 plus 2 is 7 over 5. 7 over 5 equals 7 over 5. That is true. Okay, the last problem we're going to do is a word problem. And it's going to be on page 360. And so I want you to go ahead and turn in your books there, and then start up the recording again, and continue listening. Okay, on the map that you see on page 360 for example 5 is a picture of Texas. And you know on the map down in the left bottom corner it says 1 inch equals 180 miles. Now when you are using proportions to solve word problems or do any type of ratio problem, it is very helpful if you label what you are doing. That way you will not reverse any of your amounts. Okay, so it's important to make labels, to write labels. So 1 inch equals 180 miles. And then you know as you read the problem, it says the distance between Dallas and Houston is 1 1/4 inches. So from Dallas to Houston is 1 1/4 inches, which can be put in the calculator as 1.25 inches. Now we're going to go ahead and use cross products on this. You're going to probably want a calculator for it. It's not a necessity, but it's certainly easier. We know it's going to be more than 180 miles because it's 1.25. 1 would mean it was 180 miles, so it's just a little over that. Let's go ahead and go through the work on this. It's going to be 1 times x when we use cross products, so 1x or x equals 180 times 1.25. When we put that into the calculator, that 1x can be just written as x, we end up with 225 miles between Dallas and Houston. Now you're going to go ahead and try the checkpoint activity. And I'm going to go ahead and just tell you the measurements. You don't have to actually have a ruler handy, but I'll tell you the measurement. So we are going to do the checkpoint activity for number 6. So this is going to be checkpoint, which is also on page 360, number 6. All right, it's 1 3/4 inches between El Paso and Amarillo. 1 3/4 can be converted to 1.75 because 3/4 is 0.75. Now, for your labels, make sure you put inches and miles. You know that 1 inch is 180 miles, and that is a given ratio. So you're going to use that. And you know then that you're going to have 1.75 inches between Amarillo and El Paso, and you're going to need to find out how many miles that is. So if you would go ahead and solve that, probably want to have your calculator handy, and then turn the recording back on and check your answer. Okay, when you use the cross product property, 1 times x is 1x. You have 180 times 1.75. When you put that in the calculator, you're almost at 2, because 180 times 2 would be 360 miles. You know it's a little bit less than that. You end up with x equaling 350 miles between El Paso and Amarillo, Texas. Okay, now you are ready to attempt the assignment on your own. And just a reminder about what that assignment is. For day 1, it was page 361, 1, 3 through 7. And then you were to watch the video. And now, the next time I meet with you, you'll be doing pages 361 to 362, 2, 8 through 44 even. You're going to find that you may need to come back and forth to either probably just recording 2, but maybe even recording 1 in order to do the second part of the assignment.